Romans chapter 3. Somebody read 1 through 8.
What advantage then is there in being a Jew, or what value is there in circumcision? Much in every way. First of all, the Jews have been entrusted with the very word of God. That what if some were unfaithful? Will their unfaithfulness nullify God's faithfulness? Not at all. Let God be true and every human being a liar, as it is written, so that you may be proved right when you speak and prevail when you judge. How far?
Through 8.
Through 8. But if our unrighteousness brings out God's righteousness more clearly, what shall we say? That God is unjust in bringing his wrath on us? I am using a human argument. Certainly not. If that were so, how would God judge the world? Someone might argue, if my falsehood enhances God's truthfulness and so increases his glory, why am I still condemned as a sinner? But not say, as some slanderously claim that we say, let us do evil that good may result. Their condemnation is just.
Okay. A lot of truth in there. And the world knows it because in their own words, they make those statements, the exact same statements. People, even psychologists or psychiatrists who claim to be atheists will still state these verses as true. They won't reference them to the Bible, but they realize that the truth of them just through their own experience. And we'll deal with that when we get to them. Okay, what is the purpose of the Jewish nation? Now we're going to deal with this Jewish thing for 9 chapters. It was in chapter 1, chapter 2, now it's in chapter 3. And he's not going to get done with this until we get to through the 9th chapter. So that's how important the Jewish nation is to humanity. I got an email one time, and it listed all the great Jewish contributions to mankind, aside from the religious side of it. They've written great symphonies, they've written operas. Some of our greatest scientists, Einstein and all those guys, they were Jewish. A lot of our medicine, a lot of our medical breakthroughs, the people were Jewish. It went on and it went on and it went on for like 5 single-space pages, name after name after name, and what their contribution was. And then it listed all the contributions that the Arabs have given us, and it was a small paragraph. It was like 6 or 7 lines, and most of them I'd never heard of. I think they were stretching it to say that there was much of a contribution at all. So, the Jewish nation has been a great blessing to mankind. But what does it say here the Jews have given us?
The very words of God.
The very words of God. Gave us the Old Testament, the whole foundation for God's salvation. That foundation was laid in the Old Testament. And without that foundation, the New Testament is no better than the writings of Hindu or anybody else. It's like a house that was built on sand with no foundation under it. It just falls apart because There's nothing linking anything together. There's nothing tying anything together. And so the Old Testament was the foundation that was laid for salvation to come to humanity. And without that, none of it makes a whole lot of sense to us. Right? So they gave us the very words of God. What was the promise afforded to the Jews? In verses 3 and 4. What if some did not have faith? Will their lack of faith nullify God's faithfulness? Not at all. Let God be true and every man a liar. As it is written, so that you may be proved right when you speak and prevail when you judge. Okay. So what's God's promise to them?
He's still God no matter what.
God is going to be there no matter what. Even when they fail, even when they're stiff-necked, even when they're hard-hearted, even when they refuse to do what God wants them to do, He's going to be there no matter what. Now, how does that apply to us?
Same.
That's what He said to the Jews. What about us?
The same.
The same. Because we're going to find out in another verse, I think it's 5 or 6, we are grafted in and we are also the children of God. We are Jews, just as much as the Jews are. Not on a physical genetics level, but on a spiritual level, there's no difference between us and Abraham. Okay? Believers are believers. Abraham was a believer, Noah was a believer, and all those guys were blessed by God. We have been grafted in like adopted children, but God loves us just like we're His own. It says we are joint heirs with Christ, equal in all ways. Joint heirs with Christ. All right? So, applies to us exactly the way it applies to the Jews. Now, does that mean everything's going to go well? Why not?
Because we're human, we mess stuff up.
Say what?
I said, because we're human and we mess stuff up all the time.
Yeah. Now, if you go back to the Old Testament, God never forsook the Jewish nation, but when they were rebellious and when they rejected His counsel, there were consequences. They were taken into exile. He didn't forget them; He brought them back, but they were taken into exile, and they were punished for it. And when they came back stronger. Of course, we'd never do that, right? God gives us good counsel, and we always follow it, right? Huh?
Yeah.
A lot of people say, oh, why is God doing this to me? I can never say, why is God doing this to me, unless it's something good. Because if it's something bad, He's doing it to me to get me back to the good. Okay? It's the consequences of my action that make things rough. And we live in a nasty world. A whole bunch of people out there hate us for no reason except for what we believe. We've done nothing to them. We've not taken their stuff. We have not infringed upon them in any way, shape, or form. Half of them we don't even know, and they don't know us, and they hate us anyway. And it's going to get worse.
Did you see the report this week about, I can't remember what college it was, but they're putting on a seminar because they're offended by Christian privilege. We just have it so easy.
Yeah, we're not persecuting them, they're persecuting us, but we have it so easy.
What messed up institution of higher education was that
It was one of
located
the
at?
big ones, but I'll have to look it up. I can't remember. But, you know, they were trying, basically they want to put an end to Christianity because we're privileged. And
You do realize, though, too, that every major Ivy League university started out as a conservative Christian school?
I see that
Harvard,
article.
Yale,
Yeah.
Name 'em all.
School it was.
They all started out as a conservative Christian school. Most of them started out as seminaries and then branched out from there. What happened?
The thing is, even if they are talking about the blessings that God gives us, they can have it too. It's not limited.
Amen.
Instead of just hating us, they could just ask for it.
Hey, if you're jealous, get on the train.
Yeah.
You can be blessed too.
You got a free ticket. I mean, it's not like it costs you anything.
Yeah.
What?
I said, you got a free ticket to get on the train. It's not like it costs anything.
All you gotta do is get on.
I did hear though on the radio news, I don't remember, well, like you, I don't remember which university it was. Seems like it was, I want to say Iowa maybe, or somewhere west.
Out in the Bible Belt.
Well, yeah, exactly. It wasn't right around here. It was,
Well, the Bible Belt starts on the edge of Pennsylvania and goes all the way to the Rocky Mountains.
oh, well, maybe it was then.
Right down the middle. Right down.
Anyway, it was a university that had,
We excluded that
some
state.
group, it was some club, and it was a Christian-based club.
That's no longer a state.
Their bylaws said that their president and their, everybody in their, like, had to adhere to a Christian code of ethics, and that if you didn't, you'd be subject to be removed from this. Well, the university banned this club, like said, you can't do that, you can't tell people how to live. But yet they had a Muslim organization that did the same thing,
Exactly.
and when it was taken to court, and the court actually ruled in favor of, and said you have to reinstate the Christian club, and if you allow religion-oriented clubs, you let them police their own, according to their beliefs. So I thought that was a victory, because they did make them reinstate.
Well, back during the reign of terror of our last presidential administration, there was a bakery up in the Elkhart, Gary, East Chicago area who refused to bake a cake for a gay couple. And they gave them names. They said there's 9 other bakeries in here that do wedding cakes within 3 miles of us. And they gave them a list of all those, said, why don't you go talk to them? Well, the gay couple decided they wanted to make an issue out of it. And so they shut them down. The government shut them down for discrimination. Bake the cake, or there's going to be fines, and you're going to be in federal court, and it's going to cost you $100,000, and this and that and the other. Just bake them the cake. And they refused and shut down the bakery. The bakery was shut down. They then went out to 7 Muslim bakeries and tried to get the Muslim bakeries to bake the cake. The people who owned the first bakery went out and tried to get the Muslims to bake the cake, and the Muslims refused, said, we don't bake cakes for gay marriage. Didn't do a thing to the Muslim bakeries, but shut down the Christian bakeries. Now, it's a free country. You ought to be able to believe and live your life the way you want to, as long as you're not breaking laws and infringing upon me or anybody else. But if the Christian can't refuse, why can the Muslim? It's the same scenario that you're talking about. It's okay to carry the Quran to school, but it's not okay to carry the Bible openly to school. We might offend somebody. How would I offend somebody carrying a Bible? As long as I don't beat you over the head with it, what makes a difference? If our kids carry it to school, they're supposed to have it inside a container of some kind, like a briefcase or something. But the Quran can be put right on the desk, and nobody's ever to.
I got asked yesterday, took Jason to a thing for Boy Scouts, and I help, and I'm one of the leaders and stuff. And I got asked yesterday that my opinions on allowing girls to become members of our troop, and I said if that happens, then I won't be back, neither will my son. So because I guess there's some people in Mitchell that have 2 girls that think they're boys and want to become Boy Scouts, I guess.
Well,
That did get somebody, I forget which day it was just a few months ago, was like the first girl inducted to the Boy Scouts.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and there again, no discussion on her as far as being confused about her gender or anything else. She's a girl. No discussion on is straight or otherwise. And the dad was, you know, he's like, yeah, I think it's great. He said, because she's always wanted to do this stuff. And I'm like, okay.
She's a girl, okay?
But it's
There's girls.
Boy Scouts and there's Girl Scouts. If she wants to be a scout, she needs to be in the Girl Scouts. And if he wants her to go through the skills of the Boy Scouts or whatever, then fine. Do it on your own.
Mm-hmm.
You know, be a dad, do the time, do it on your own.
Exactly.
Why make a federal case out of this stuff?
Just the next step of erasing gender. I mean, they'll just be scouts from now on.
but see, the problem is nobody considers the consequences. What happens if she gets raped? Or touched in some way that she shouldn't get touched? Or what happens if somebody happens to walk behind a tree that she's behind,
Right.
relieving
Now,
herself?
leaders are gonna be in trouble because you walked in the
Yeah,
right
and what
place.
happens when you start taking a bunch of girls and boys camping that are young?
And
I mean,
Right.
first
You know,
one
when
gets
I-
pregnant, you're gonna have a problem.
when a bunch of guys are out in the woods, well, you know, if they need to go behind a tree, they go behind a tree. Well, what if she walks around behind a tree and the guy's exposed to her? Is that gonna be a problem to Dad? Well, you know it is. He's gonna yell, holler, scream, rant, rave, and have a fit. Bottom line is, the way it's organized, it shouldn't be there anyway. But it's the world we live in, and it's gonna get worse. It's absolutely gonna get. Target is still sticking to their guns about unisex bathrooms.
I was shot there, and
And
that's
that
what
is
ended it.
$19 billion they lost last year compared to the previous year. And they are willing to give up $19 billion to make a statement. And, you know, in every Target store there's a family restroom that anybody can go in. They already had a restroom that anybody could go in, but they had to march down Main Street and make some ridiculous statement about that.
And I was shopping Target for that reason, and we did not even see about, we had an experience in New Albany a few weeks ago in the Home Depot, because we're needing to order a custom vanity top. Well, let's just say that we didn't want to sit on the other side of a computer with a very large, scary he/she. And we left the
She-Man.
store. Yeah.
I was real loud about we're leaving. It was
I mean,
pretty bad.
I'm talking makeup, nail polish,
Yep.
the whole, and perfume to gag you. I mean, and real, you know, outward, just flamboyant with, you know, like, look at me. I'm, acting like a spectacle here. I'm trying to be nice, but.
When I went through the sensitivity training up at IU a couple months ago, religion was one thing that they really touched on pretty hard. I can go in there, I can take a Bible with me, I can read it, I can pray, but I can't do it out loud. Nobody can hear me. If you're Muslim, it doesn't matter.
Yep. You can put your prayer cloth down in the middle of a hall and chant your prayers, and you're protected.
Yeah.
You're protected.
Are you singing the song of your people?
All right, let's go don't be mean. Let's just be honest, but let's don't be mean.
Yeah, I remember that long.
Yeah, that's pretty.
But, Bill, you will be surprised, when I went through the Centos thing, how many of those kids up there on that campus, in their dorm rooms, have prayer stuff on their wall, Bible verses on their wall. There's several of them
Oh, yeah.
that are.
Oh, that's good.
It surprised me how many of them actually did it.
There are Christians up there, but it's a struggle.
Well, if you notice in history, when people don't get excited about something until there is opposition, until they think they're going to lose something. You know what I mean? That's just like the thing with the gun rights and everything. Everybody's buying guns, everybody's joining the NRA because all of a sudden they think, oh, somebody might take that away from me. But as long as they don't think, that's just like your Christian faith. When people are opposing and people are saying, you know, well, this group can do this, but you Christians, you know, I think it will cause some revival. I think it will cause some,
It already is.
you know,
Oh,
It already is. It already is. There's a lot of people. It is forcing people to take a side and not just drift down the middle of the road. It is making people choose.
But the problem with that is.
It's not a bad thing in that respect.
The problem with that is I've seen it, you know, when the Twin Towers fell, you saw revivals everywhere and then all of a sudden nothing. You know, it's got to stick. And I don't see it, you know, I see people, oh, let's get in the bandwagon, you know, they're trying to take something away. We've got to stop doing it when they're trying to take something away. We've got to do it all the time. And that's, you know, that's where we're going wrong. You know, as soon as everything calms down, then you don't hear a word about it. And then somebody, you know, puts a bug in somebody's ear and raises it again, and there it goes again. So
I forget now if it was Thomas Jefferson or Patrick Henry, whoever it was, but they said, if we do not exercise our rights, we lose them. We will lose them. And it's true. Somebody started to see something.
Well, one thing that you're seeing there on a massive nationwide scale, I had a lesson prepared for my class this morning on the parable of the sower and the 4 soils. You know, where the sower goes out and he throws a seed and it's on the wayside and birds come and get it, and then throws seed out there and it lands on the rocky soil, and then boom, it immediately shoots up. It's happy to receive it. And then as soon as the sun comes out, it withers up and dries up, and then you got some that falls upon the thorns and it gets choked out, and then some of it gets in good soil and flourishes. And the whole thing is about Christ spreading the word, spreading the gospel, spreading his salvation for everyone, you know. And it brought out that, you know, why would a farmer knowingly throw his seed on ground that won't produce? And you don't know when you're spreading the word where it's going to produce that. And when we're talking about how when tragedies happen, people really rally up, and you know, they turn to God. And then as the water quiets down and everybody's like, okay, whatever. And that's the way of things. And it comes down to, it pointed out in that lesson where that seed that landed in the good soil, that seed will produce, that plant will produce more seed. So we're to take Christ's place and spread the gospel. And that's what we're doing. And that part of it is right now, as far as the country goes, I mean, we got all kinds of concrete where our seed's getting thrown, and thorns and rocky places, and it's just not, it's everywhere we go.
and the government throwing around their pesticide.
Yeah. But the thing of it is,
Yeah, thank you.
we're not to be, if we want to be that kind of soil that produces, you know, we need to be careful about how many thorns we let in our life, and you know, not being that rocky soil where the first little hiccup we wither. That's That's the thing, we're called to be Christian, we know full good and well, he made it plain, it's gonna be tough. Therefore, we have to be firm, we have to be strong.
Bottom line, it's not about politics, it's not about sexuality, it's not about right or wrong. It's about God and Satan. That's what it's about. I mean, we lived in this country for 250 years, and nobody felt obligated to share their sexuality with anybody. I mean, you don't know anything about how Janice and I operate, and I don't want to know anything about how you and your husband operates, husband and wife. That's between you two, and that's between you and God. So why are we marching down Main Street with this thing? It's not really about that. It's about Satan stirring up opposition to the truth. Because if the truth ever shines, he's exposed. And if he's exposed, all his power's gone. But the bottom line is, it's spiritual. Now, he uses the tools that he uses because we fall for them. But it's none of your business how Janice and I handle our intimacy, and it's none of my business how you handle yours. It's not that at all. What it is Satan and God at spiritual war to claim souls. That's the bottom line. And then Satan will use anything to distract us from it. And when he does, just like right now, there is an awakening. There are people who are saying, wait a minute, I don't care what's politically correct, that's wrong. I don't know that Donald Trump is God's man of the hour, but I do think God's using Donald Trump like he used Nebuchadnezzar and all kinds of people in the Old Testament. The truth of the matter is, we're in times where they have tried to water down and wash away everything. But the truth has always been there, and the truth has been seen. How would Nietzsche have put verse 5? I'll read it to you. You listen to this. But if our unrighteousness brings out God's righteousness more clearly, what shall we say? That God is unjust in bringing his wrath on us? I am using a human argument. Certainly not. If that were so, how could God judge the world? Now, how did Nietzsche put that? He's an atheist. He's a philosopher and a psychiatrist out of Germany back in the early 1800s. How'd he put it? You know it. You've heard it before. Without evil, good would not exist. There has to be a comparison. Without sin, righteousness would not exist.
How do you know what
You wouldn't have
is evil
anything to compare
without?
it to.
How do you know what is evil without? Or how do you know what is
Right.
good without evil?
Well, pardon me?
How do you know what is good if you don't have evil to compare it to?
To compare it to. If you don't have that yardstick, how do you know? You know, back in the Old Testament, before the law was given, you heard the phrase several times in the Old Testament, and each man did what was right in his own eyes. He did not have anything to compare his actions to. Then God gave us the law, and we saw a glimpse of righteousness, and we realized that I really can't just steal Josh's tools if I want to. I can't. It's not right. Now, back before we had the law, you could justify anything. Well, I need him more than he does. Well, he doesn't take care of them anyway, they'll be better off with me. I mean, I could say all kind of things to justify stealing Josh's tools. But when God gave us the law and we had the yardstick on the wall, then it was, do not steal your brother's stuff. Whoops, can't steal his tools anymore. So now I borrow them and don't bring them back.
I think that's the other way around for the most part. I borrow your stuff and you never see it again. Like the screwdriver.
I keep track of every chisel. You're not gonna get away with it. But you see what I mean? There has to be something to compare it to. There has to be, without darkness, you don't perceive light. We've got the night to compare to the day. Okay? And we've got truth to compare with evil. When we were given the word, we were giving something to compare it to. Now you go back in the Old Testament, and long before the word, people had conscience because they were made in the image of God. And I could justify it all I wanted to, but deep down inside in the dark of night when I laid on my bed and couldn't get to sleep, I knew that it was wrong. But I still justified it and went on. God gave us the law, we knew it was wrong. We knew it was wrong. So even Nietzsche knew Romans chapter 5, the truth of Romans chapter 5. Romans 3:5, it says that the unrighteousness and the righteousness of God gives us a comparison to know what is right and what is not right. If we didn't have both, we wouldn't have the comparison. If you go to the 19th chapter of Revelation, what happens? The world is a total and complete mess. Jesus Christ has to come back lest we totally destroy creation, or our little rock of it, our little piece of it. Because everybody's getting nuclear weapons and North Korea is just stupid enough to use them. And something's got to happen. At some point in time, Jesus Christ returns, it says, lest we destroy creation. Right? So he comes back, and he puts Satan in the pit. And there's nothing to compare the two to. There's no longer any choice. What happens on the earth? For 1,000 years, what happened?
Peace.
Huh?
Peace.
Peace. No wars. No death. Nobody dies. The river comes out of the city of Jerusalem, and fruit trees are just bare everywhere in the middle of the desert. The lion lays down with the lamb. The Bible goes on and it goes on and it goes on. And because God's in charge and not Satan, previously Satan was in charge and not God, and before we had the word, and people just did whatever they wanted to. And you had to protect yourself. Okay? Satan's thrown in the pit, God's in charge. We don't have both of them to deal with, and it's total peace. We let him out for a short season. What happens?
Chaos.
That's right.
We go right straight back to war. The final war. Armageddon is the first final war. And then at the end of the 1,000 years, we let Satan out for a short season. A season is what, 3 months? So in the space of 2 or 3 months, this huge army congregates in front of Israel again and tries to wipe out God's rule, and he has to finish it right then and there. Satan goes to the lake of fire, and for eternity we live in peace. You see, without both, there is no choice, and everything works. When you have both, you'll draw up sides. Okay. Now, let's go on down a little further. Someone might argue, if my falsehood enhances God's truthfulness and so increases its glory, why am I condemned as a sinner? Why not say, as we are being slanderously reported as saying, and as some claim that we say, let us do evil that good may result, their condemnation is deserved. Okay. Put that in today's terms.
Two wrongs don't make a right.
Hmm?
Two wrongs don't make a right.
Say again?
Two wrongs don't make a right.
Two wrongs, well, this is saying two wrongs do. This is what we refer to as a license to steal. If me being evil magnifies God's glory, isn't it good that I be evil? That's a license to steal. I'm trying to justify what I want to do, the evil desires of my own heart. Right?
But is there any instance when you can do evil and give God glory? That don't
No.
happen.
No.
No, but see, he's saying, don't use what I just said as a license to steal. That philosophy doesn't work out because evil is always evil and good is always good. And what he's saying here, the way we would say it today is, don't use what I just said as a license to steal. Because people do that. People say, well, hey, if evil magnifies God, the more evil I could be, the better off God would be.
Or if I'm saved.
Huh?
Or if I'm saved and washed clean, then I can go ahead and do what I want because he's already promised me. I'm
Because
gonna get it.
there's good connected with it. That's a license to steal. And it is not valid doctrine. But how many times have you heard somebody take a verse and do what they wanted to do with it?
Guilty.
Huh?
Guilty.
Yeah. Well, you know, if I kill that jerk, it's because the Bible says an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, and he's got it coming.
All right, gotta go.
See what I mean? See what I mean? Even though God said, Paul said, God's righteousness shines compared to our evil side. It makes the truth more plain. Okay? That's not a license to steal. Don't go ahead and be evil because you think you're magnifying God. God doesn't need our help. God's glory does not need our assistance. Us being evil just makes Christianity hypocrisy. That is not a true and valid argument. Okay? So, verse 5 we handled. What is 8 in modern terms? 8 in modern terms is would be a license to steal. The concept of doing something evil to magnify good is a license to steal. I just want to do something evil, so I use the Bible to make it okay. I think we're going to stop there, and we'll pick up with 9 and question 6. Verse 9, question 6.